What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Me TV Reviews. I am your host, Mo, and today we're going to be discussing Only Murders in the Building. That's right, y'all. This is season 5, episode 3, titled Rigor. I hope you guys have had a wonderful start to your week. Y'all, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the synopsis. We're going to do 3 and 4 together. So go ahead and get your snacks and buckle in, all right? So the synopsis for this one is: the trio stumbles upon a crucial piece of evidence and promptly compromises it. With time running out, they scramble to solve the mystery before the police close in on them. Okay, y'all. Let's see what they get us into. So this episode starts off where we left off with the last one, and that's with Mabel and Charles being in the underground room, the gaming room that they didn't know about until now. And Charles is doing the voiceover where he's talking about how before this was a illegal gaming room, this was the old stable for the horses when they, would do the buggies and stuff. But after the automobile was invented, they had no use for it anymore. So they turned it into a gaming room, and of course, it was at the turn of the 20th century, and it was a hit. Of course, things have changed over time, but the fact still remained that this was the place where all of the mobsters went to. Okay, and rumor has it that this is where the Empire Building was contracted, where they ended up turning into Roosevelt Island and something else that has to do with New York, right? So it's got a lot of history to it, okay? But definitely the mobsters were running this place from its inception to present day. So Charles is like, I can't believe we never found this place. And of course you wouldn't be able to find it because you aren't a mobster. You weren't into these illegalities, and you just so happen to find this deck of cards or get this deck of cards from this widow. So it is what it is at this point. So they end up looking at the envelope, and in the process of them trying to figure that piece out, they hear Oliver screaming, y'all. Oliver is screaming because he just got knocked down by Nikki's dead body. So he gets a whiff of the gardenia flower that he has on him, and it turns out he's allergic to those. So he sneezes on Nikki. And so they were like, don't touch the body, Oliver. What are you doing up there? And of course, since he just sneezed all on him, now he's got to get his DNA off of him. He done touched on him a little bit. So they was like, just don't have your DNA on him. Clean him up as best you can so the police won't suspect you in this crime. Well, Oliver does not do that. Instead, he puts Nikki in this laundry cart. He puts all of this dry cleaning on top of him, puts some plastic over it, and wheels it down to the Arconia. So he gets in the elevator, and just as the door is finna close, here comes Uma. And so Uma was like, oh, it smells like somebody died in here. Oh, Uma, baby. So he was like, I gotta take some stuff to the dry cleaners. It'll be okay. And so she ended up asking him, why are you sweating so much? Because he's trying to make conversation with her. He's clearly nervous. And he was like, apparently, menopause does something to a man's body, even though menopause is solely for women. So she was like, as she's getting off the elevator, I gotta get the hell up out this building. So he ends up rolling the body, not to his place. He rolls it to Charles's place. And so they were like, why do you have this laundry bin? And of course, as they're cutting to the opening, we hear Mabel and Charles scream at him like, what the hell are you doing? So he ends up telling them that he cleaned him off as best he could. He blacked out, and then next thing you know, he's rolling this laundry cart with this dead body down 86th Street. Okay? Almost got discovered, ain't no telling how many times. So they were like, well, okay, the cleaners doesn't open back up until 7 o'clock. We need to figure some things out. So they ended up finding this green substance under his fingernails, sort of kind of like the finger. It's the same green substance that the finger had, that Oliver had mixed in with the shrimp, right? So Charles knows that this is from the tables, the gaming tables down there, right? And so even though they don't use that type of material anymore, we can tell that this finger and Nikki's body are connected. He was down there in the gaming room. So just as they're having a conversation about it, Charles starts hearing voices. Nikki's dead voice, to be more specific. Okay, or at least the one that he's made up in his conscience. So Nikki is talking Cash Money to this man about how he gonna die alone, and how he's been hitting on his wife, and he called him a perv and all of that, because Charles got feelings for Mrs. Cachamelio. Okay? I hope I pronounced that right. So anyway, so he's talking Cash Money to him, and Charles is like, okay, why does this always happen to me? This is my cue to get this body up out of here. So just as they're finna do that, Mabel was like, wait a minute, hold on. Lester was handed over to the police, and they ended up calling it an accident, when we know that his death is not an accident if the bodies were down there in the gaming room, because Nikki's he's got on the same outfit that he had on in the picture from the day of Oliver's wedding, which means that he died. He probably died the same day, right? So these have to be connected. This is going to be our opportunity just to make sure that the police don't screw this one up. So they ended up deciding to do like a miniature amateur autopsy. So they end up laying Nikki's body on Charles's kitchen table. And I was like, what in the world? Only at Charles's house, right? So they end up doing the autopsy. Not only do they find the green substance under his fingers, they also, of course, he's got a cleaver, a meat cleaver sticking out his chest, so we know what the cause of death is. He's got rope rings around his wrist. He's got a white substance on his sleeve, like his jacket sleeve at the wrist cuff. And so Oliver was like, let me sniff that, because there might be some coke. I mean, I used to do theater back in the 80s, so let me see what this is. So he's sniffing and he was like, nah, it ain't coke. Y'all, he was disappointed. Oliver misses his coke, okay? He was having a good time back in the 80s. So they were like, okay, well, clearly it's not that. And I was like, thank goodness it ain't no cyanide or nothing like that, because you would have been as good as gone. So anywho, they also find that his ear looks like it's burnt, right? And so they realize, and then they move his body to try to see if he's got rigor mortis that has set in shit. Well, his body is not stiff. So Charles was like, well, that means that he must have died recently. And Mabel looked at his ankles and she saw that the blood was pooling, which means that he had to be laying in this particular position, like on his back or something like that, for a prolonged amount of time in order for the blood to pool. So how is it that we don't have any rigor mortis, but that's the only thing that contradicts the idea that he died the same day that Lester did? We'll come back to it. And then also Charles had mentioned that the gardenia flower that he had on, it wasn't wilted, it was still fresh. So they realized that it's 7:15, or sorry, not 7:15, it's 6:45. They only got 15 minutes to get this guy back down to the daggone cleaners, right? So just as they're finna get ready to load him up, Mabel happens to notice this paper in his mouth. And it's got the Arconia stationery. It's the Arconia stationery. So why would he have that stuff in his mouth? They ate some time in between, and because they had gotten hungry, all this autopsy work that we've been doing that causes us to have some rumbling tummies. So they warmed up like some old Chinese food that he had in his freezer. And although it was piping hot on the outside, it was really cold on the inside. And so Charles had said something about it. He complained about it. And then this got Mabel to thinking, what if his body was frozen for X amount of days since the wedding, and then somebody placed him at the cleaners because they knew that somebody would find him, and he's just been thawing this entire time. Now, I don't know about the flower part. I don't think that flower would come back to life like that, would it? If it's been in the freezer, maybe somebody recently put that on there. Anywho, so they realized that, right? But they got to hurry up and get this body back to the cleaners. So they load him up, and they're finna get ready to take him down, y'all. They're all crammed in the elevator again. Uma's there along with some other tenants, and everybody is getting this major whiff of death, right? And so Oliver was like, it's me, okay? Let's go ahead and scrap this now. So the guy was like, wait a minute, you going to the cleaners, right? Oh, can you take this down there since you're going down there, and I'll give you 2 free therapy sessions? Because Oliver has really been battling with his guilt about how he treated Lester right before he died. He was really hassling him about that daggone shrimp on the day of the wedding, all the while Lester was probably in the process of getting knocked off. Okay. So he's really feeling bad about it. He really wants to make it up to him. And Charles was like, you are who you are. You are a narcissist. Okay. Even though you can't change it, though. It is what it is, all right? We're only people. We're very complex. We have very complex emotions. It'll be okay. So when they get off the elevator, they see that Randall is talking to Uma. Now, Uma is complaining about the elevator making this weird noise again. So he refers back to the ledger that Lester had left him because, Lester would make little notes about little this and that's around the Arconia, right? So he was like, oh, let me refer to the ledger. So Mabel gets a look at it, and she was like, oh man, that's the same stationery that was found in Nikki's mouth. So she was like, we got to get our hands on that. So Oliver decides to be the one to handle that. Meanwhile, Mabel and Charles are supposed to be responsible for getting his body back to the cleaners. Now, in the process of them doing that, they run into some paparazzi who are waiting on this girl named V. Now, her real name is Althea, right? And her and Mabel knew each other from when they were kids or whatever, growing up. And V is, oh man, she is ignorantly condescending. Like I don't think she knows that she's doing it, but she does it, right? So, anywho, she done blew up at this point because she's what is she? She's an influencer. I don't know what she is, y'all. She's a pop star. Anyway, she is a pop star. I'm sorry. Yeah, she's got to be a pop star because she changed her name to V, and she was saying it like she's the #1 trending person on Wandify. So every time you type in like a band that you're looking for, like the Beatles or the Spice Girls or the Chicks or somebody like that, you'll always get her first. And so that's why, she's trending like she is. But anywho, she talks to Mabel, and Mabel was like, I have an apartment in the other building. Turns out she just purchased a penthouse in the Arconia. And so Mabel was like, what? You for real? And she was like, yeah, girl, my therapist said that I should, or my manager said that I should find a place that's sort of boring. And I mean, It's all old people here. So I mean, it's old people in you, but you still cool. You still cool. And so Mabel was like, actually, I live in the other building. But it's coming along pretty good, even though it's just a studio. I got enough room to do what I need to do and record and all the things. And so she starts talking about a podcast, and she looks it up, and she was like, oh, it's not in the top 10. I don't see it. Are you sure that that's the name of it? And I was like, girl, how you gonna ask me if that's the name of my podcast? I don't like this girl already. Keep her in her room. Keep her doing influencer things. Keep her in the studio. Keep her wherever you need to keep her. Just keep her off the screen because I don't like her. So Mabel was like, yeah, you got to hit the N more or see more. And she was like, oh, you're number 17. So she gets this great idea in her head that maybe she should be a guest star on the podcast. And she was like, yeah, no, I don't think we need any help getting to where we need to go right now. We good. Thank you, though, girl. I really got to go. So we pop back over to Oliver. Y'all, Oliver is talking to Randall. And Randall's being hassled by all of these tenants about various complaints. And so he ends up shooing everybody away and told them to come back later. You'll get whatever you need to get. And Randall was like, oh man, thank you, Mr. Oliver, for being so nice, Mr. Putnam. And he was like, oh, I'm not really nice like that. And he was like, well, I mean, well, you the nicest one to me. you good for all the doormen. And he was like, no, I'm not. And he ends up snatching the ledger, y'all, and taking off. He was like, I need this, thank you. So they're going to get whatever information they need to get out of it. Now, over to Charles. Why do we always leave Charles to do the important stuff? Because we know that he going to get himself into crazy predicaments. So he's the only one left to drop this body off. And he gets it there in time, right? Gets the body there in time. However, he can't push the cart back through where Oliver must have pushed it through. Now, Oliver said he blacked out, so I don't know if he has superhuman strength. I don't know how he got that cart through there with the body in there. But either way, he did it, but now Charles can't. So he's pulling stuff out of the cart, and then he tries to pull at the body, and Nikki was like, oh, so you finna put DNA all over me again? After y'all done used 1,000 wet ones to get the DNA. And I was like, are we even sure that the wet ones is going to get it out? Because I don't think that's how that works. But okay, right? So he ends up grabbing like a whole bunch of the plastic bags that go over your clean clothes. He ends up grabbing a couple of those to cover up his hands, right? And so now he ends up pulling the body out of the cart, and he pulls it back to the behind the counters, right? Now I don't know what he did with the cart or anything else, because he's looking down at the body and he pulls the lapel of the shirt to the side and he sees like death alone, right? So then Nikki comes back to him and he starts talking about he starts reciting this poem about how death comes for all of us, and how the coffins they have thousands of bones in the cemeteries and these coffins, and there's no sound, and death comes for sound, just very morbid, very somber, very dark, right? And ominous. So Charles is finna get ready to go. Of course, he done messed up everything. Just then, as he said something about the sound, y'all, the police come in. And so these two officers are like, well, there's the body. But then the one mentions that it's not found in the place where it's supposed to be, where they said it was supposed to be found. Meaning it was supposed to be hanging, but Charles couldn't hang that body. They found it on the floor. And so the other officer was like, man, forget that. Don't even worry about that. Just report that we found the body this morning. Just do what they say. Don't ask no questions. And we're going to blame it on the Caputo family. All right. So clearly somebody is trying to frame them. We don't know who. We don't know why just yet. But clearly these officers are crooked. So Charles ends up trying to take a picture of them while they're having this conversation, right? But Charles forgot to turn his daggone shutter off on his phone, y'all. So the officers hear the noise, and so they done pulled their guns and they go back here looking. Now, thankfully, he blends in because they don't go back far enough, but they ended up leaving out, right? So he hurries up and skedaddles back to the Arconium. So when he gets there, Mabel is kind of like looking through Althea's, I'm not gonna call her the she's looking through Althea's social feeds, and um she ends up apologizing to him because she left him behind, and he was like, oh, that's okay, at least you caught up with your friend. And she was like, no, she's not my friend. Okay, we were friends at one point in time, but it ended very sourly. And yeah, just when I thought that I found a sense of happiness and a sense of self-being, here she comes and she just ruins it by telling me she's moving in and disturbing my peace. So he was like, oh, that's okay, forget her, you got your whole lifetime ahead of you. And me, on the other hand, I'm probably just gonna die alone by myself in my bed, nobody thinking about me. And she was like, oh, that's very morbid. Are you okay? Are you okay, Charles? And his face said no, but his mouth said yes. Okay, Charles is not okay. And so he does end up telling her what happened with the police and how they're definitely crooked. Just then, Oliver busts in with the ledger, right? So they end up going through the ledger, and while it seems like there's nothing there, they do realize that there are some pages missing. So Mabel ends up coloring over. She stencils it, right? And so you can see the make out of the missing page because, when you write hard, you can still see it. So anywho, they're able to make out that there are code names, and these are bird names because y'all remember Lester named everybody with a bird. And so these are bird names, and they have amounts by them about how much they owe down in the gaming room. So it's a lot. It's a lot of money. And so they need to figure it out. Just then, they end up realizing that all of these game nights are held on Saturdays. And so that was like, oh, it's supposed to be a game probably happening tonight. We need to take a nap. So Oliver ends up taking the ledger back downstairs, and he runs into Randall. And Randall is just panicking, y'all. He is freaking out because he did not finish his training with Lester. Lester is gone now, and the building is falling apart without him. And so Oliver ends up giving him this long roundabout story about how he basically told this lady who who was acting in one of his plays that he had produced that she needs to be herself and not be anybody else. Now, the play still sucked, but the moral of the story is you can't be Lester, just be you. So he ends up offering his services. If you need anything, let me know. I'll be happy to help you get on the good foot. And so he was like, oh man, thank you, Mr. Putnam. This, that, and the third. And he was like, as a matter of fact, I got a couple questions now if you got some time. And he was like, actually, I really have to go take an important nap. So anytime but this time is convenient. Ciao. So as he's going back up to bed, y'all, Charles, I think Charles might have prostate cancer or something because he gets on the phone and he calls this place where he's doing like a trial for a drug, and he's got like a pseudonym name or a fake name, and he gives like his account number for the trial, and he says that he ran out. He's gonna run out soon and he needs a replacement soon. Now, when he was talking to them earlier about the game happening at midnight, he was like, oh, by that time I be done went to the bathroom at least 3 times. So I was like, okay, you go to the bathroom very frequently. You're doing a trial. You've been talking about death a lot lately. It's been on your mind a lot, like through your conscience. I think Charles might have prostate cancer. And he's trying to, get some clinical trials happening there. So y'all better not kill him off. Don't let him be the next person to die in the building. Okay? So, anywho, as he's getting ready to lay down, everybody else has been sleeping, and we get this poem about how um, death is everywhere. Death surrounds us all, especially like when we're sleeping. It's in the bed, it's in the covers, it's in the blankets. Some of us go to sleep and we never wake up. We sail to whatever the beyond is going to be for us. And we have no inkling that that's going to happen when we close our eyes. Okay. So then it seems like just as soon as he lay down, his alarm clock is going to get ready to go off. So he never took a nap. Now, when they get downstairs, he is suited and booted, y'all. He looks really good in his little pinstripe suit. So they get down there and they're looking around and they end up hiding behind the bar, right? So when they get down there, they hear these people coming. They quickly decide to hide behind the bar. Well, three people come in. It's two guys and a lady. So the two guys are, well, they're all billionaires. One belongs to he's a technology billionaire, or he's in the field of technology. The other one is an heir for a big pharma company, and then the lady literally she owns half the real estate in New York. So they're all in the billions. And so they start looking up their information a little bit, and then Charles is starting to give the voiceover about how times have changed. And so the gangsters that we thought ran the world back in the day, that is no more. They have been replaced by people who you never thought would be calling the shots. They don't look like it, they don't dress like it, they don't act like it, unless sometimes they're behind corporate doors or what have you, right? You just never know who is running the country at this point. So, and I think that they are saying a lot with, these voiceovers sometimes. The way that this is going now, because the air doesn't look like it. Okay, yeah, the lady and the guy look like they have some money, but you would never think. Now, why are they down here? Why y'all playing with this money like this? They're probably making all these secret shady deals behind the scenes, having other people come down here and to lobby deals that impact the small people like us, but make them richer, right? The rich keep getting richer, the poor keep funding the rich, thus making us poorer. So, yeah, not looking out for us at all. Now, one of them says, "Oh, well, let's go get something to drink at the bar." So just as he comes over and fixes himself something to drink, y'all, wouldn't you know it that this man has a bandage around his hand because he's missing a finger. And that's the way the episode ends, y'all. Of course, we're doing a 2-for-1. So I'm going to come right back with episode 4 in 5, 4, 3, 2. And let's go ahead and get into the synopsis for episode 4, titled Dirty Birds. Okay, so the synopsis for this one is: snooping goes sideways when 3 billionaire suspects catch the trio and invite themselves over for an evening at Oliver's. Now, y'all, this ain't a scene for scene. I actually watched this episode last night because y'all were supposed to get these last night, but I fell asleep. So it's just a continuation, all right? So let's go ahead and get into this one. If I missed the minor things, y'all, please charge it to my head and not my heart. We got the overall gist of this episode, though, all right? So this episode picks up where the last one left off, and they're at the bar. Now, of course, they notice that our guy, Jay, he's got a huge hand bandage wrapped around his hand. And so, of course, this could probably be their guy that knocked off Nikki, right? Or at least their thumb, right? The missing thumb. So they end up causing a distraction after so they do the rundown of who they are. Like I said, you got Sebastian, who is like this techie billionaire. You've got Jay, who's like a Nepo baby billionaire. He's going to inherit all these millions. And then you've got Camilla, who owns half the real estate in New York. So they end up causing a distraction after Oliver Oliver ends up dropping like this glass and shattering it just when it seems like they were finna talk about the events that happened last weekend, and it causes them to start looking around. So Mabel thinks quickly and she throws like something that lands somewhere else on the opposite side of the room so they can sneak out, right? They hurry up and they get upstairs. And then as they're coming upstairs, they're talking about why there are three billionaires in their basement. Like, why are y'all here? When they run into a robot, y'all, they have gotten a new robot doorman named Lester, just missing the last E. Okay. And so Howard was like, yeah, since I know the history and all the people in the building, they told me that I need to be the one to integrate this robot to everybody. So Randall is there and they're like, what the hell is this? So Uma was like, this is just them ushering in the robots. Okay. The old times of New York, or the old times period, are dead because the robots are coming to get us. Okay. The robots are coming. And so Randall was like, not me. Okay. Because my union, y'all try to get a union. Okay. Get into a job where there is a union that represents you. There is power in numbers. So he was like, my rep for my union told us that we're going to be here. They worked it out to where there's always going to be a human doorman there, which is great. He's just not sure if it's going to be him or not. So Lester is creeping everybody out because he wants their fingerprints and their irises. And Uma was like, you ain't getting my daggone iris or my fingerprint. I ain't getting nowhere near you. As a matter of fact, I'm finna go get my hair done. And I'm not even sure why I'm still doing that since nobody's paying attention to me. I see you, Uma. I see you, Uma. Rest in peace to Bunny. So they end up going into the house. Y'all, when they get there, Oliver is there and he is with Vinny. Y'all, Vince is back and both of his eyes are uncovered. He doesn't have the pink eye anymore. So Oliver has stayed up all night. I guess it was like a day lapse in between. So Oliver and him have stayed up. Well, Oliver stayed up all night to do the murder board that Mabel usually does because, what people are saying about him is slowly starting to get to him. And he's really, just wanting to repair his image in the eyes of others, if you will. So he was like, I stayed up all night. I did this thing for you so you wouldn't have to do it. And Vinny starts to talk about how him and Lester used to go bird watching. Not so much bird watching, just kind of like following Lester around, but he sure does miss the times that they would go to the park. Okay. He misses his friend. Lester was so sweet. So Vinny breaks down the birds and the night that the incident happened, and he said that usually the gaming room is packed. But according to Lester, there were only 5 people there that night. Okay. According to the ledger. So there were 5 people there, and he's got the 3 billionaires up on the board and Nikki. So Nikki is represented by some bird that has a mafia-like mentality when it comes to revenge. Okay. You cross them and it's nights out. Lights out for you. Then talk about Sebastian and how the birds never age. Nobody really knows Sebastian's real history because he owns the internet, okay? And he sleeps in, a thing full of like baby collagen, baby skin every night. Camilla, she is, she's a homemaker, okay? She makes things beautiful. I forgot what they called her bird, but anyway, her bird makes things beautiful. They beautify things. And then Jay, he gave us Jay's family history. So Jay comes from a family where his family had created some faucets originally, But the faucets ended up giving a lot of people that purchased them lead poisoning. And so then they turned into this pharma company who then provided the medication to fix the lead poisoning. And this is where their billions came from, right? I was like, damn, they didn't think to sue. I mean, well, how long do it take to cure? Is that a thing? So anywho, that's that. So we're still missing one person, right? Because that's only 4 people. And I'm assuming Lester didn't include himself like ever in these things, right? So they figure that Jay is probably their culprit. Somebody went left somewhere, and Nikki ended up with a meat cleaver in his chest. Well, how are we going to get these billionaires to talk to us? And they cut this promo to where they're insinuating that they know a little something something about what happened at night. And of course the billionaires hear it. So they end up Jay ends up reaching out to them because I think they tag them or something like that. So Jay ends up reaching out to them and says that he wants to have dinner with them at 7. So Charles is like, okay, he said dinner, like we got to get something fancy dancy, right? Now, I will tell y'all that I didn't actually lay eyes on the episode after this, so the visuals are going to be a little skewed, okay? But just know that Oliver's version of dinner for these billionaires is Godiva chocolate, some hors d'oeuvres, and some champagne. I don't know how many he had. It seems like his count was really limited because when it was time for them to come and get the food, when it was time for them to try to start eating and snacking, right? He was like, oh, I ran out, or I don't have that many. My apologies. But Oliver's thought process is to get them, give them all these sweet and salty snacks and appetizers, and then get them drunk enough to where he'll confess, right? But instead of him just popping up, all 3 people pop up. And the reality is the other 2 came because they thought that Jay was going to rat them out, right? So they come up with this story and they all deny, like, oh, I wasn't there for that. I wasn't there for this. Da, da, da. They say that they're there because they like the history. They like the history of the gaming room, the velvet room. That's what they call it. The velvet room down there. And so, the mobsters have been here. We wanted to be here too. Okay. We got all this money. We bored. We want, to have a sense of spice in our life, if you will. We want to live a little bit. So we went down there and we played a little bit. That's it. Ain't nothing to it. So then they split them up, right? Because they figure they're probably covering for each other. Let's just go ahead and split everybody up. So Mabel ends up taking Jay. Oliver takes Camilla. And Charles takes Sebastian. So, y'all remember, Charles has been acting very, very concerned and very dark and, I don't know, about death, right? It's been heavy on his mind that death is coming soon for him. And then, so they talk about that, and Sebastian was like, basically, you're only as old as you feel. Okay. That's why every time I put one of my wives in an assisted living home, I felt bad about it. Sure. Did I not want to get up out the bed a time or two? Absolutely. But did I? Absolutely. I got out that bed. And he probably got married again. And again and again and again. Right. So Charles has made this his grandma's famous duck dish, right? Because billionaires love duck, right? Who doesn't love duck? And so he's made this dish, and him and Sebastian are talking about age. Feeling old is just, that's all in your mind, okay? That's all in the eye of the beholder. You only as old as you feel. And so he was like, you have to really go with the times. Like, if you're not willing to bend with the change in times as far as like technology and all these things will go, you'll always feel like you're old. And I was like, okay, you definitely might have something there. Okay. But that's more for me. So so they end up trying the dish, and he's talking about, how much parsley or whatever do you have on this? Y'all, Sebastian ended up taking something and like cutting up his grandma's dish. And so he was like, "Oh, you ruined it. Da 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 da. Now, my grandma's recipe is lost forever." I thought it was the dish, but it might not be. I think it might have been the paper. So, anywho, he managed to get the recipe back because they had an old film of him doing it, preparing it on TV, live with Regis. Oh, Regis Philbin. So, rest in peace. So, he was trying to figure out, I need to know how much orange juice or orange zest I had and da da da. So he chopped it up and he got the measurement off of there, and then he also had the TV footage to back it up, right? So he was like, okay, I see what you mean now, Sebastian. So things have been smoothed over. Now, Sebastian told him that night they were down there, Nikki came in and he had like this white powdery substance. They all told the same story. Nikki had this white powdery substance. He was coked up and he was acting all crazy. And then, he came in with this meat cleaver and was acting crazy and was upset. And so he was yelling. Jay thought that he would be the hero, and Nikki sliced his thumb off. Bada boom, bada bam. That's the end of it. They took off running, right? So by the time they left, according to them, Nikki was still alive. Okay. Now, they're all getting different bits and pieces of stories, but Sebastian said, no, I never touched a meat cleaver ever. But I was like, okay, you probably, from the sounds that I was hearing, you probably was the one that hit him with the meat cleaver. So then they go over to Camilla and Oliver. And Camilla is like, baby, your house. Like, this place has really good bones, but Oliver, everything else in here has to go. And so Oliver was like basically insinuating that, I kept a lot of this stuff because of the stories that are behind whatever said item is. And so then he gives the story about how his ex-wife wanted these curtains so badly, but he was so spiteful about it that he ended up keeping them, right, to piss her off. And so she was like, your ex-wife. And so then he said, yeah, he mentioned Loretta, brought her up in conversation. And she was like, oh, so you have a wife that came home to this? It was like, well, no, but she's seen the house before. So Camilla really has Oliver rethinking a lot of things, right? And so by the time they leave, y'all, she has redecorated his whole thing. Okay. It was like, oh my gosh, how did she do all this? And we didn't even hear anything. We didn't hear any noise. And then Mabel is with Jay. Now, Camilla ended up telling them the same thing about Nikki being coked up and being really aggressive and going after Jay. So, anywho, over to Mabel and Jay. Now, she initially asked him, what happened to your hand? And he was like, why do you hang out with two old guys? So they ended up talking about other things. Now, Althea has been a sore subject for Mabel to approach, but Jay gets her to open up a little bit after he tells her that he put his trust in one of his friends to be the CEO of this company. Now, I forgot to tell y'all that when Vinny was given the description of his family, they also said that Jay he had started this nonprofit, in heavy quotations, nonprofit, that was giving money to guerrilla groups. Okay. And it ain't the good ones. So he was like, yeah, I gave my really good friend that I trusted this prominent position as CEO over my organization, and they did me dirty, screwed me over time and time again. And he was like, you know what? This is not the first time that it's happened, and it probably won't be the last. And the reason that he keeps attempting to do these things is to prove to his family that he's not a screw up. Okay. I want to prove my family wrong, that I can do something good with this money. I'm not just some Nepo baby. But in the footage, when they opened up the episode, when it was time for his footage, he was like, yeah, I just want to prove to everybody, or, rich people only, people think that rich people get bored or they do whatever because they got all this money, okay? But I'm just your average person. I'm just your average Joe, right? Now, he's got this hot dog in his hand and he's got his dog in his lap. But as soon as he quits, as he as he stops the live, he hands the hot dog to one of his security dudes. He's got like 3 or 4 security dudes with him. He ends up throwing something for the dog to go fetch, and he was like, oh, the dog can't find it. Go get it. Go get it. Go help him. So, yeah, it definitely screams Nepo baby. Now, Camilla, like I said, she is like this interior designer or something like that. And she said that being a billionaire, I mean, it's okay, but she got her most excitement out of her first $100 that she earned when she was like gambling. So that's what turned her on to it. And Sebastian, he said that he loved chess. Him and his father used to play that all the time. And then by the time he was 5 years old, he was able to beat his daddy. And ain't nobody ever been able to beat him at chess again. And so he said, I never looked at my father the same after I beat him. Damn. So it screams emotional coldness and emotional unavailability. So anywho, he gets Mabel to open up after he says that, and she starts talking about Althea because earlier in the episode they had ran into each other in the elevator and Howard was there, right? So Howard was telling the robot Lester that this is Thea. So the robot started playing like whatever her most recent song is on Wandify. And so then they started talking about the podcast, and she was like, oh, how's your little podcast? And I was like, that is so disrespectful. Don't you ever call, I don't give a damn how small it is. Don't you ever call my podcast little, okay? I have 2 listeners tuning in, but you can't call it that. So she was like, oh, it's coming along. And so then she was talking about how they had recently released the promo for season 5. And then Lester starts talking about how, oh yeah, this is in the, it has dropped, or it's not in the top 20 or da-da-da. So to try to boost herself up to be more than what she was, Mabel was like, oh yeah, we just signed a deal with Wandify. We already got the movie. Eva Longoria is going to be playing me. Now we just signed this deal with Wandify. And she was like, oh, that's great, And so Oliver was with her, and later on he was like, girl, Mabel, what is that about? And so she tells them about Althea and how they were friends in middle school. And then they grew up a little bit more, and they had this thing where it was like sunny and cloudy, and she was sunny, believe it or not, and Althea was cloudy. But then she went away for the summer, and then Zoe passed away, her friend, from season 1. And then I believe that might have been like when Mabel was like, I don't know how. Anyway, her friend Zoe passed in season 1. And then by the time she came back, Althea was acting real brand new. She didn't want to be friends with Mabel anymore. Mabel was really depressed about her friend passing, and she just wasn't supportive of Mabel at all. So that's where things went left with them. So now she's just feeling like she's always got to prove herself to Althea. So that's why she was putting on about the Wandify thing. So she tells Jay this as well. Not so much the sunny and cloudy thing, but the gist of their relationship. And so he was like, okay, I feel that. So long story short, they're kind of bonding a little bit. So they end up letting them go. They don't believe that they're guilty or anything like that. And then next thing you know, they get a call from Wandify. Mm-hmm. They want to get into talks with setting up some sort of contract with them for the oncoming years. Now, I think they have presented as a 3-year contract to where they can exclusively release their show on Wandify, and get paid pretty good for it or whatever. And they're going to do this huge rollout for them. So they're super excited about it. They've already signed off on it. And then all of a sudden, things start happening. And something comes back to Mabel where she's just like, wait a minute. Wait a ding dang minute. um the the hand, the thumb, because I think she was looking at how they were signing, and she noticed that the pointers point like out, the thumbs point out in whatever direction or hand they're supposed to be in. Long story short, the thumb that they have in the freezer does not correspond with the hand that Jay had wrapped up. Okay, so if it was the left thumb in the freezer, he didn't have his left hand wrapped up. He had his right hand wrapped up, or vice versa. So they've already signed off on this. And so the lady is telling them more about what they can get or what they can expect to receive while they're working with Wandify. And then she also mentions that they had some more recent investors contribute to Wandify. And so they were like, oh, who? And lo and behold, it's Jay, Sebastian, and Camilla. Now, of course, because they are under contract, they can talk about things, or they can't talk about specific things, more importantly. And you know what those things are. They're not going to be able to talk about the investors and how they suspect them of being murderers. Now, the voiceover for the outro is of the investors talking about how the plan is for y'all to go in unassumingly. They got their story straight before they went over there. Go in unassumingly, get the confidence, gain the confidence of the op. Okay, have them trusting you by the end of it, and then by the time you're done talking to them, they suspect none the wiser. When you're probably the killer all along. So now how are they going to solve Lester's murder? At this point, we don't really care about Nikki. How we gonna get to the bottom of Lester's murder? Because one of y'all did this to our homie. Y'all did this. Or y'all had the extra person, that last person that was in the gaming room. Yeah, y'all probably had them do this because y'all couldn't get y'all hands dirty. Watch it be some security guard or something like that, or maybe Titi. Anyway, y'all. So now the crew feels bamboozled. They've been tricked. Hoodwinked. Okay? How they gonna get out of this? But that's the way the episode ends, y'all. I hope I didn't miss too much. If I did, like I said, I apologize. Y'all was supposed to get this last night, and I was tired. I'm not gonna lie. But before we go, oh wow. Okay. Before we go, let me see if I can find it. I do want to give a shout out to wait a minute, y'all. Where'd it go? Nope. Here it is. Okay. So y'all, I be listening on Spotify and Apple. I be trying to look out for the comments and stuff there on those. But there are smaller platforms that are also posting reviews and everything. So I happened to find one the other day from Bianca Lani. Anyway, Bianca's all the way in Australia, y'all. And I'm sorry, Bianca. I hope you're still listening because you posted that and I found it 2 weeks after you posted it. So my apologies for getting to you so late. But and it was supposed to post on Apple Podcasts, but I didn't see it. So anywho, Bianca was like, I love Mo's recaps of the We Were Liars episodes. Y'all, if y'all didn't go listen to those, it's a really good show. Go check it out if you're into like mysterious things. There are a whole bunch of twists and turns at the end, y'all. Go listen to it. Love her vibe and notice some episodes in the back catalog that I'll definitely be listening to. I ain't gonna speak about that back catalog because I'm still getting there. I'm still very much under construction. But we do have some more shows coming up, okay? High Potential, Reasonable Doubt, Only Murders in the Building. We're also still going to be doing Life After Lockup. And I have one more episode to do on Wednesday because I also recorded episode 7 yesterday, y'all. So y'all going to be getting both of these at the same time, okay? I love y'all so much. I'm going to try to do as much as I can before Saturday. After that, y'all, I don't have no promises to make to you, okay? It's going to be busy. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Y'all, please stay safe out there. And until we meet over the airwaves again, I am Mo, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.